So you all know I'm doing this, so you can remind me when I forget to do it. That no, you forgot to record. All right. So I'm going to show you the toolkit. I know Gordon just told you don't use the toolkit, but I'm going to say, well, use it a little. Try it out. So I'm going to give you a demo here. I've got like the next hour to demonstrate the new toolkit. And if you have any questions or thoughts along the way, please step forward and interrupt me. And I'm happy to go over any aspect of this toolkit that you want to talk about. I know some of you have probably already taken a good look at it and may have some ideas already. So this doesn't have to be me showing you things you already know. It can be me talking to you about things you want to know. So you have that caveat. As I get in, I just want to, some of the key goals in our redesign of the toolkit were introduce responsive design, which has been done. I don't know if any of you have looked at it on an iPad or even on your smartphone, but you can use the toolkit on those more mobile type devices. And I think it works pretty well. We got one feedback that the menu doesn't work well on one smartphone, but we'll get that fixed. So that has been met. Another really high priority goal was to be compliant with W3C accessibility guidelines. We're looking to hit a AA rating on the W3C guidelines, and we're not quite there yet. We're still in the building and development process for this site, but that remains a high priority goal. And when 3R is done, it will be AA compliant. And then, and you'll see this as we go through, we really, from our user group that I used and other communities that I talked to about the toolkit, we really were looking to integrate the content in a more helpful way and to make the toolkit more instructive about the nature of and structure of RDA itself. So those were two things that we've been working towards. I think the site reflects those goals, although we haven't completely reached those goals yet. All right, so here we are in the login, new login page. As you can see, it includes in the right-hand column news. This is information that's pulled off our blog and is posted there. We also have some information about recent books that the co-publishers of RDA put out, or the only books that the co-publishers of RDA put out. And then we have information about recently added or updated instructions, and you can see there's quite a few because we're constantly updating everything right now. And then we have the login, and the old versions of approaches to login are the same. If you're IP authenticated, you will be automatically logged into the site. You will not be logged into your profile. You will be logged into the site. You can use your old, you can use an account ID and password to log into the site, but you won't be logged into your profile. I'll show you what this looks like real quick. This is a account login. It's not working right. Let me try it again. One of the things that's changed with the new login is that it is case sensitive now. It never was before. Most of you maybe didn't realize that, but so when you're logged into your account, you're going to see your institution name up here, and you're going to see this profile button over here that will allow you to create a profile account or log out. This box doesn't change, but this is login box still here, so you can log into your profile. Some people have been confused by that. I understand that. It's these two things are maybe a little too subtle to show that you're logged in. So in the coming months, we'll either look to change this login box in some obvious way that you know you at least logged into the system. The big change we made with the login is that you can now log in with your password, your profile password, and that logs you both into the site and your profile in one simple login. So if I put mine in, I log in, and I'm fully logged in. So I can access everything the toolkit has to offer and see everything that's on the site. And you can see here it lists my recently viewed instructions. This was direct feedback we got from our user groups that, you get logged out of the toolkit, you're working in the toolkit, you get distracted, you go do something else, you get logged out, you come back, you can't remember where you were. The toolkit now will remember where you were and allow you to get back to where your work was. Speaking of the log out, by the way, we know that the timeout is messed up right now. It keeps logging you out after 5 minutes or so. We're working to fix that. I promise we'll get it fixed in the next day or two. So I'm going to go into navigation now. So this is the top level navigation across the top. And as you can see, we've separated the structure into entities. And these entities are listed in what we call LRM order. This is the order that they're discussed in the library reference model. So we just carried that over. So this will be the consistent order on the toolkit across translations, etc. We have guidance chapters that offer general guidance on specific topics. This list may grow. Policy statements. We have a couple sample policy statements here, and I'll show you this in a little bit. I did some test policy statements just to show you how the function will work. But of course, we don't have policy statements, real policy statements yet, because we haven't finished the texts for the policy statement writers to write against. When the text stabilizes, we'll get them to work. And then finally, we have resources. And resources, it's important to point out, has both RDA content and what we consider non-RDA content. So this first top section are kind of what we call reference things: glossary, VES, relationship matrix. The second section contains what were basically from the appendices in the original toolkit, have been moved over to here. And then this bottom section, it contains what we consider non-RDA resources that might be of value to the cataloger. So books of the Bible, terms of medium performance. I'll be adding AACR2 in here into this area as well. So I'm going to go into an entity. So of course, we have the entities, and then the elements are organized within the entity structure, chapter, if you will. And this structure is the basic structure that we're going to see with both entity and element files, more so with element files we'll see as we go along. But we have definition, scope, pre-recording, and you can see we have some links already. So there are two ways these links work. One is you click on the title and you go to the page, just as you would normally expect to do. Then we have, this is a bug I can work on too. So we have this little icon, this little window with an arrow in it, and that's a preview button. So if we click on that, it'll bring the article that it's being cross-referenced to up in this right rail. And here you can preview, you can even scroll a little bit on some of these and make an evaluation of whether you really want to go through and leave this page to go to the other page or not. And these previews all have a little X. So you can see I can have several of these previews open. And I did this, actually I should do this in a different order. They stack on top of each other, but you can close the X. And if you actually do it in order, let me just show you this. They will, I think, oh no, they're not. I gotta fix that too. They usually stack on top of each other, so you can see the titles and get the X's. That's broken, I have to fix that. there's going to be a lot of, oh, we got to fix that still kind of things going on. We have recording section, and then we have the elements section that lists the related elements, etc. So this is a way you can scroll through this section, and if you know what you're looking for, you can just type it in, and it'll help you find that particular element quickly. So I'm going to click on that, go to creative work. Again, you see the definition and scope. So this is an element page. It's going to be pretty, this is going to reflect pretty much the standard element page. One of the big additions we added was this element reference piece. So after definition and scope, you get this element reference, not elephant reference. That will contain information that's pulled from the registry. So both the definition and scope and the element reference are all data that's held in our registry. And it gets pulled in, it got pulled in by that Big Bang script that Gordon mentioned earlier and populated here. But we run now, each time we update the toolkit, we run a what we call an operational script. And any changes that are made in the registry get pulled in and dropped into these places automatically. So this is an area where this is registry information showing up in the toolkit. So we have an IRI, domain, range, alternate labels, user tasks, recording methods, all the things that apply. And of course you can see that we have the mark mapping, which is quite extensive here. This is a list of mark fields that are relevant to this particular element, I should say. We have the pre-recording. We have examples. I know people are asking a lot about examples. Say, where are the examples? Well, there are lots of examples to come. We are working on it. It's a big chore, but our goal in the end is that we will have more examples than the original toolkit ever did. So, as I've hit upon examples, I'm going to step aside and turn this over to our example editor, Kate James, who's going to take you through the different types of examples we have.
Okay, speaking of, are there any examples in the new toolkit? You have some handouts in front of you. Underneath the agenda, there's a handout about where to find some examples in the beta toolkit. This isn't an exhaustive list of all the examples, but front and back, it's a representative sampling of the elements and some instructions that contain examples, as well as the different types of examples. And that was as of June 18th, which is when I did that handout. So it also explains what particular type of example is for which element, and I'll walk you through what the differences are for those in a minute. But first I wanted to point out the immediate difference you'll see from the original toolkit and the beta toolkit is that the examples expand and close. And in the original toolkit, you could either have the examples all hidden or all open, but it was all or nothing. So this is nice if you want to take a look at the example and then close it back up. So the first type of example is what we're calling basic. And these are the ones that are most similar to what you see in the original toolkit. And if the element has different recording methods available, you might see a variety of recording methods demonstrated in these examples. So, for example, this one is a value that's been recorded for a creator of work using an IRI. And then the next one shows a structured description, which some of you might think of as an access point, and an identifier, and then an unstructured description. And you'll see Sometimes unstructured description and structured description happens to look the same, and sometimes it looks quite different. It just depends on where you're taking your unstructured description information from and what your agency choices are. So this is a basic set example box. I'll just close that up. And then these are also more basic set examples. Then the next type we have are recording methods examples. When you have all 4 recording methods available to you for an element, you might want to see how it looks using each method. So for recording an unstructured description, you can see here's the name of the creator is found in the resource. The structured description. So it looks pretty much the same, but I've given you the VES source because one of the important things for a structured description is to know what vocabulary encoding scheme you're taking the information, the value from. So again, now we're seeing, again, still the same thing. It's still the Kansas Geological Survey. And this is an identifier in the VES source. And finally, the IRI. So that's a reporting methods example. Now, the view as relationship example was my idea to provide a visualization of how this data would look recorded as linked data, but for linked data, you would just use a bunch of IRIs, and that's not very helpful for us humans to read. So this isn't pure linked data. I've given you some help. So at the top, we have the entity, work, and then I've given you a human readable label for what this example means. So it means this work has creator of work, and then it gives the agent that's the creator. And then underneath it, we have these same values expressed up here, but as linked data. So this is the domain, which is the domain for the work. Then this is the IRI for this label has creator of work. And if you clicked on this, it would take you to the label in the RDA registry. And then this is the range, which in this case is the agent. Now, these are not actually hyperlinked, and there are some reasons for this, chiefly because we don't control these, but we do control the RDA registry. So I know that this one is always going to be active. If it moves, I will know that ahead of time. That's the reason for that. But should you happen to go to VOF and want to type that in, you would probably find something there. So the last type is a view and context example. Now let me be very clear. This is not a record. This is a set of data elements that will help you identify an entity. So there are often multiple elements that you would use to identify an entity. And in this case, we're in the creator of work element. So it's going to show you highlighted in the blue. These are the values recorded for creator of work. And in this case, there's 2. Here are some other elements that have been used to identify this work, but they're not highlighted because you're not in that element. So just at the bottom, we have has related work of work. So now if I go down to the bottom, there's 2 of these. Let me see if I get the right one. Nope. Here we go. So now, right, we were just looking at this. Remember, this was blue for Christo. Now it's no longer blue. Down here, has related work. Work is highlighted in blue because this is the element that you're looking at right now. And you also might notice that this looks a little bit different than the element name because it has a verb in front of it and has related work of work instead of related work of work. That's okay. That's a registry label. And as you can see, it's an alternate label that's available for you to use for this element if you would like. And I chose to do that because I thought it was a little more readable for human beings, and it helps you understand how the element values relate to the entity when you have the verbs. Let me show you one other. So, authorized access point for official communication. There is a view in context example, and I see a number of element values, but I don't see anything that says has authorized access point for official communication, and I don't see anything highlighted in blue. Well, did the example editor mess up? No, actually. That's because authorized access point for official communication is not an RDA element. It is instructions for recording authorized access point for a special type of work, which is official communication. So nothing is highlighted here. So this is where it lives. So the way I did this was I set up the coding in the examples to be linked to some prologue information that you can't see that's at the beginning of the file. So it knows when you navigate different places, it knows what's, if the IRI is matching at the top to the example information in the bottom. And that's how it knows what element this belongs to. But in this case, there is no match because this isn't an element. And also, let me just go back to here. So you can't tell this here, but these registry labels are coming directly from the OMR. So if they are updated in the OMR, then they'll change in this example automatically. And so I've like to consider I've future-proofed these for the next person that has this job. But it's also the power of how linked data can work for you, because you could have information directly linked to the RDA registry, and your element labels could update automatically too. So I hope that you'll find these different kinds of examples helpful in understanding how the new structure of RDA works and the new elements that we have for you. And there'll be more examples added as time goes on and different elements. It's just depends on the production schedule. Thank you.
Thank you, Kate. All right, so one of the features that we added to the new toolkit, or I guess we improved upon in the new toolkit, I'll say that, is the use of tools, user tools. So if you highlight any piece of text on the page, you will get this little toolbar that will come up. The first one is a bookmark. And a bookmark is strictly a bookmark. It just marks the page so you can come back to it later if you want. Marks the location. You can give it a title. We've added the ability to organize your bookmarks into folders. So if you're updating them or tracking them, you can organize them in your profile into folders with special topics, etc. And then we also have this receive notifications when the page is updated. So what we're working towards here, this isn't all quite working as we planned yet, but the goal is any page that you put a bookmark or a note on, you can then choose to get notifications. And that means on your login page, you will get a notification if that page has been changed by the RC. If we've made some kind of significant change to its content, you'll get notification. You can go back, check your bookmark or check your note and make sure it's still relevant and up to date. Okay? So just to show you the note interface, and again, I can just, any part of this I can add in. I call it the note, and the note is different from the bookmark in that it allows you to add text to it, and you can write whatever text you want. You can put set access for local or private, not global, but local or private. Local, of course, means it can be shared within your subscription, so among your colleagues at work. We'll all see this. Again, you can organize them in folders. You can write your text right there. This box is expandable, so you can make it pretty extensive, the note, if you like. While we will have policy statements from major institutions or groups, we can't have policy statements for every subscriber institution in the toolkit. So this would be a tool we think that you could use to kind of implement a degree of policy statement within your own subscription account. And then finally, there is the link tool. So if you are writing some documentation, etc., and want to link to the toolkit, you just click that link icon, and it'll give you the URL for that, and you can copy it and paste it in. Right now, this particular these URLs aren't working quite right, but we'll get that sorted out in the next month or so. Okay. Couple of things I want to put on these pages. One, there's the related elements piece. That's another kind of standard piece that you'll find with each element page that gives you a sense of where the broader and narrower elements are. And then there's a navigation piece at the bottom. This is basically previous and next buttons, but they have the title of what the previous and next elements are. So this will show you that within the elements, basically the data maps are the maps that support this content and organize it underneath. The elements are organized alphabetically. There is a major navigation piece that's not ready yet, but I'll tell you about it. It's going to be right up here. It's going to appear above this related. It says sections here, but this is the policy where the policy statements will appear. But above that will be a graphical navigation browser. I hope to have that ready in the fall. It will be, as I said, it's a graphic interface that shows it'll be a small, kind of large thumbnail type element on the page that you look at it. You will be able to discern a little bit, but you click on it, it will enlarge and it'll allow you to navigate through the RDA structure, and it'll show you hopefully how the elements relate to each other, how the entities relate to each other, relationships, etc., like that. So this is a piece to come. It's an important navigation piece to the site that we haven't been able to build quite yet, but it will come. And we think it'll we hope that it will go a long way in meeting this desire of having the toolkit be more instructive about how RDA is structured, etc. Okay, next I'm going to go into search. The default position for search, usually when you come to it, is all. So in the original toolkit, we had RDA quick search at the top that only searched RDA, and if you wanted to search other documents, etc., you had to go into the advanced search and select certain parameters, etc. So we've gotten rid of that. And what we now have is a search that searches all the content on the toolkit. But it has a drop-down menu too that allows you to begin to filter that content. You can search only RDA or only policies or contributed documents. Contributed documents or documents are what in the original toolkit are referred to as workflows. We're just giving them a more generic name of documents because you can write those documents to be whatever sort you want it to be. I think these are fairly straightforward. The exact title search is just that. If you type in the exact title, it'll take you directly to that page. You won't get a hits page or anything like that. So that's the goal of the exact title search. This is also the page. It has a couple interesting elements in it that weren't in the other. One is this has a vocabulary encoding scheme list on it. You can see it here. These are typically found under structured description. And you'll see a little faint line underneath these vocabulary words. And what that means is they are clickable. And if I click it, I'll get a pop-up that gives the definition of that term. So you don't have to navigate away from the site to find out what the exact definition is for these terms. This is also a page. There are two pages where I did test policy statements. This is one. So if I choose a policy statement, I chose BLPS, British Library Policy Statements. You can see the policy statements have popped up on the side here. You see the little faint line over the top saying this policy refers to this option. They're aligned. Again, this is test content. Don't anyone, just for Alan and Thurston's sake, no one think this is what British Library is thinking of doing or applying to policy. This is something I made up. So I don't want to get them in any trouble. So these will appear in the right. These, of course, reflect some policy statements that are very short and pithy, as British Library policy statements are known to be. Of course, we have some longer, more complicated policy statements from different organizations, say one in this country. Those will show almost the full content. It'll be much like the scrolling window that you saw earlier when I did preview. You'll be able to scroll through the content. If it's really long, you can click through here. They're linked at the top and go to that actual policy statement page where it lives. These will cohabitate. I'll do the preview. And so if you have a bunch of these that are kind of near each other, I think this one may not have anything in it. It'll hide behind the policy statement. There's not really any content with this RDA font size. I won't go into why. It's too complicated. But these policy statements have this little send to back. That's your way to move it out of the way and show what's on top. There's nothing in this font size one. That's the problem. It links to vocabulary encoding scheme. So the linking process hasn't quite worked out for that yet. Anyway, so here you can see like the scroll effect that would work for the policy statement as well. The reason these are slightly different is because this, the policy statement is actually displayed on the page. It appears in the page where the preview is a piece of JavaScript that pops up on the thing. So they kind of overlay each other. So I can even go and look at, there's an LC policy statement here. See how this works. So if I send that to the back, then you can see the full preview of the link. And I can close it and see the policy statement again. And this is a longer one. You can see you can scroll through it. Okay. I'm going to go back to the search. There are there are different ways to do search. I can type in, of course, my element that I'm interested in, copyright date, and I'll get hits. In RDA documents, there's 21 hits here. I'm looking at 10 right now. But you can see at the bottom, if there were hits in policies or contributed documents, those would come up as well. And then you can apply some additional filters here. You can narrow the policy statement results to a specific set of policy statements or specific documents. Or even RDA documents, you can limit it to entity articles, element articles, glossary, guidance, resources, etc. These entities, elements, glossary, resources, these are all stated again in the, if you look at the result at the bottom, it'll tell you what type of file it is. So this is an element, this is a glossary term. I think that's all we have for this particular one. There are other ways I could approach this same topic in a search. I could do, if I knew the old instruction number, I can type in the old instruction number, the instruction number from the original site, and it'll pull up that element that's associated with it. There's copyright date. You'll notice when I went through the element reference, we have a lot of information in the element reference. All that information, all the information there is searchable. So I can do a search on a mark field if I wanted. If I wanted to take a very RDA type mark field, I can do that. I can put in 336 and I get content type. I can also try a 546. And you'll see I'll get several elements that map to that part of mark. You can also refine that search if you put in, search does have, phrasing and Boolean operators and wildcards. We use the asterisk as a wildcard. And you could put in a phrase like bibliographic 546 in quotation marks. And it would just give you hits for elements that map to the bibliographic part of 546, and you wouldn't get authority. So you could filter for authority or bibliographic on those results. Okay, I'm going to talk about this top toolbar right now. English. That's the language I'm speaking right now. It's also the only language that's available on the toolkit right now. We, of course, have several translations already on the original toolkit. I think we have 7 or 8. We'll be adding 2 more immediately following after the completion of 3R. We'll be adding Hungarian and Arabic. Arabic is particularly exciting for a number of reasons. But as we add them, this is where you'll be able to do a quick language change. You can see it has settings for site language and RDA language. This is something we're testing out. It's basically, you can set your site interface, your user interface, and those text strings on the site. You can set a language preference for that. But then you can also switch your language over the RDA Toolkit language, the content language. You can switch over to a different language if you need to. So you'll set your basic language preferences in your profile, but this tool is to allow you to do a quick changeover if you need to look at a different language, which is important for some folks who live in multilingual communities. And then we also have this font size switch here, which is active now. You can switch it over to large. You get a slightly larger presentation. So whatever setting you prefer is available. Help is not available. Sorry. But it will be someday soon. I will start working on that this summer, and we'll have a help section that will give you some guidance on much of the things I'm talking about here, how to do this or that in the toolkit. Jump over to Bookmarks and Notes. This is the interface. Again, I haven't made any bookmarks or notes. I need to do that. But this is where they will be stored, where you'll be able to edit them, etc. And here's where you can add a new folder, give it a title, and organize your bookmarks and notes are both here. Documents. Again, we don't have any documents yet, but we're going to get some soon. The bookmarks, these features on the top bar here, bookmarks, documents, views, are really, I haven't prioritized in development yet. So they're not working quite as they should yet, but that's a priority for the next couple months, and we'll get those functioning properly. In the meantime, I just want to show that they're here. We've made some significant changes to the document feature. This is the new interface. This can be popped out too. This is the space in which you actually do your typing. It can be popped out into another window if you like, and it can be dragged to make bigger. Well, you have these basic macros. This is an HTML editor. It is not Word. So you need to understand that. And you have to work with the tools that you have here. You can switch to a source view if you're comfortable working in HTML and do your own markup. But don't think that you can just take your Word document, copy and paste it in here, and the format's going to be the same. It's not. There are limitations. So you just need to be aware of that. One of the features we've added here is this add author. So in the original toolkit, you can see there's a bunch of people there. Probably don't even know they're on this list. In the original toolkit, when you created a document or workflow, only one person owned that document. Only one person who created it could edit it and work on it. We've changed that now that multiple people can own and edit the document. So someone can go in and add authors and assign it to those group of authors. And all of those people can go in and update that document, make changes to it, etc. When one person is editing that document, it gets locked, and there'll be a little lock icon on when you come to the document section. They'll show you this isn't available right now. Someone else is working on it. So only one person can work on a document at a time, but multiple people can own it and use it and work on it. This is helpful too. Will allow the subscription administrator, the staff manager, to go in and set. They'll be able to go in and set who has access to this document for editing and who doesn't, et cetera, like that. So again, of course, we have access choices: local, global, private. Global means it gets shared with all of the toolkit users, subscribers around the world. And I think we have sharing licenses that you can choose. This is language, so this changes the HTML interface to accommodate whatever language you're interested in. And I had them put up every language. So as you can see, we have Amharic and Aragonese. We have every possible language that's available is here. So hopefully, at the very least, you can find something you can use. And then when we go back, once your documents are created, they'll appear in this contributed document section. And then you see there's this section subscriptions. So what the subscriptions does, and if you go to this tab, it'll allow you to search all of the documents shared globally on the toolkit, and you can choose to subscribe to them. That means they'll be available to you when you click on documents up here. When you mouse over that, it'll show you your list of documents. And you can subscribe by title. You can subscribe to a specific document that you find is useful, or you can subscribe by institution. So if you're very fond of documents created by Stanford University, you can subscribe to Stanford University and have any documents that they create available to you. And I think we can set it up so you get notifications if those documents change, but I'll look into that. That's one of the future developments, kind of getting back to bookmarks. Also, we were thinking about is, as I described earlier, we have the idea that we can notify you that there's been a change to this page that you have a note or bookmark on. We can probably also build that out so if the note changes, we can let you know about that too. So if you are using the notes as kind of a policy statement, and everyone on your staff is automatically kind of subscribed to those notes, they'll get a signal in their Toolkit landing page that you guys have changed that note. I don't know if that would be valuable to people or not. So that's a piece of feedback you can give me when you have a chance. Finally, we have views. This is something that's not quite developed yet because we need other things to happen to make it really work. But it's going to be, I think, a very important piece of what the toolkit is in the future. This is where you will go to kind of set up your preferences for your toolkit experience. You'll choose the policy statements you want to see. You'll pick one policy statement as your primary one, the first one that'll appear on the pages when you navigate around the toolkit. You could choose here to always have policy statements open. So when you come to the toolkit, the policy statements are already displaying. You can filter for examples. You can pick if there's certain types of examples you want to see. You can filter and just have those always be open. You can have the element reference piece open too, always open when you come to it if that's what your preference is. I think down the road we might be able to say, take this down to the level of even having instructions open. If you don't want to see instructions for recording an identifier or IRI, you can choose to have those hidden, so they're just not in your view. Obviously, we need to get the policy statements and all the structures more fully developed before we can implement those. But these are pieces that will be there. Then we also have added for policy statements, there's private. There's also going to be an institutional view, and we'll probably require every subscriber to set an institutional view. So the staff manager or description administrator goes in and they set up a view that they think should be the basic view for their staff. These are the policy statements you should be looking at. These are the examples you should be considering, et cetera, like that. And then the user can then go and the individual user can have that view on, or they can switch to a different view that has personal settings that maybe build or add to that institutional view. That here's what my boss wants, but I also always like to have the element reference open. So I'm going to add that to my view, and that's my setting. You can have multiple views that you save with your profile. Language, obviously, you want to choose your language of preference for the toolkit. And then we have this thing called RDA template. And right now, the only option is RDA standard, which is just everything that's in RDA. But in the future, because of changes that we made to the structure or the architecture of our data, we will be able to present different views or versions of the RDA instructions, different kind of organizational group clumps of the instructions for specific tasks. So, for example, we could organize instructions that are most relevant for music catalogers and blend them with, say, MLA best practices to create kind of an RDA toolkit experience for music catalogers. And that would be a template that you could choose to have. And we could do this for other subject matters, cartographic resources, et cetera, et cetera. And hopefully maybe down the line we even do it for some other cultural institutions that might find RDA valuable. So for RDA for archivists or RDA for museums or something like that. So that's kind of looking down the road and what we're trying to work towards and build with the toolkit. Finally, I'll just say, here's the submit feedback button. This is not a permanent button, but it is going to be there persistently over the next few months during this beta site period. I encourage you to open it. It's a simple form to fill out. Put your name and email, and there's slots here for 3 pieces of feedback. It asks you for a category. It's just we're trying to keep. I don't want to get just a big rambling list of all the things wrong with Toolkit. I want to be able to organize it a little bit so we can make sure we address everything. You can submit as much feedback as you like. To keep hitting that submit feedback button and keep filling out forms. We're happy to get the information and work on it and make improvements to the toolkit. So that'll be there for the foreseeable future, and I encourage you to take advantage of it. For the time being, the only thing I've told people is you don't need to report broken links because I know there are broken links. We get a long, extensive report each release about broken links, and we're working on them, and we'll get that cleaned up. But for now, you don't need to tell me that a link is broken. How are we doing for time?
We've got about 5 minutes.
We got about 5 minutes or more. I'm open to questions. If anyone has any questions about any topic related to the toolkit design.
Mark Sharp from Washington University in St. Louis. I've got a lot of questions about search, but I'll just maybe ask 1 or 2.
Okay.
Does any feature of the search burrow in and look at notes that you may have added? Is there any way to search the notes that you may have added in instructions?
We haven't really delved into that yet because we haven't had any notes to be able to search. But my answer to that is we can do that.
Okay. The other one I want to ask has to do with the policy statement display. What happens when, and maybe this won't be true in the future, what happens if a policy statement refers to another policy statement? This is most notorious in the Music Library Association best practices, which many of them will just simply say, use the LC policy statements. So what would happen in that scenario?
Well, typically the link, it would be linked. The MLBP policy statement, it has a hyperlink to the LC policy statement. You click on it, and you would go to that LC policy statement.
So from the pop-up, you'll have to click and then another pop-up.
Well, it would go to that. You're raising an interesting point. So right now, the assumption would be when you click on that link, you would go to the LC policy statement page. So what you're saying is you want it to switch to the LC policy statement, keep you right on that right rail. So that's an interesting thing that we'll work on.
Yeah, I'm not sure what I want, but all I know is that as it stands now in the toolkit, when you bring up such a best practices, it will have a link, and then you have to click on it to go to
right.
LC
and I'm saying,
statement. And I'm just asking that in this context, when you're popping up an MLA best practice and it says go see this, what's going to happen?
So right now it would navigate away from the page that you're on and go to LC. But what I'm reading into your question is it'd be great if it didn't navigate away, it just switched that policy statement to the LC policy statement.
Probably, although I think there are also situations where there's explanatory text after that initial statement. But that's something to work on.
You guys make it so complicated.
Louise Ratliff, UCLA, just a cautionary note, turn your ad blockers off. That has the potential for interfering with pop-ups. I did not experience it on this platform yet because I haven't had the time. But I know using the new ALA Connect, turn off your ad blockers because you won't see what you expect to see.
Okay. Yes.
Evelyn Bohar, NYU, and Queens College Library School. How, as an educator, am I to teach my students? How can I say, go look at this? look at this part of the RDA toolkit. How am I going to reference it? Or if I'm preparing something to train my coworkers, and I do training at work at NYU, how am I going to refer them to various sections without anything to link guide them other than giving them a URL or something?
Gordon? So this, of course, is the question we were all expecting. And we discussed it yesterday, and I said, Gordon gets to answer this question. He volunteered for it. It's a good question.
Okay. There are two words that have not been mentioned yet, so I'm just going to say them. Instruction numbers. We don't think they're necessary. If you want to do what the questioner has just asked, then you've seen that you can write documentation that has active clickable links on it that will take you to the precise point of the toolkit that you want to draw people's attention to. And that's it. That's going to satisfy, we think, 90% of the cases for the use of instruction numbers. Why don't we put instruction numbers in? They don't work. They don't work in the original toolkit. What you have in the original toolkit right now are dead zones, the tumbrils whistling through an instruction number where the instruction was deleted 2 years ago. But if we take the instruction number out, it leaves a gap, and people think where there are gaps, there are mistakes. So we've had to leave them in with, this is no longer operative, or you see this page intentionally left blank, this kind of thing. Over time, this is going to clog everything up and severely impair the experience of using this new toolkit and the functions that it has. There are 1,800 elements, and we have no idea what the average number of options per element might be, but let's just say it's 5. So this is what we discussed yesterday, okay? Metaphorically at this stage, but I will, if somebody comes up with something, award a prize of $1,000 to anybody who can come up with an effective numbering system that actually meets the needs that people want. Because we've looked at this for 3 years now, and we've been listening to people, coming up with alternative suggestions, and none of them work. We discussed yesterday the fact that if you put a number on anything, people assume that that is a sequence. So 2 comes after 1. I mean, that's what a number is for, isn't it? But there are no sequences here. There are no page numbers. The options are not in any particular order. They're grouped by functionality. We can filter them out. We can filter them in. And so it seems certainly to me and my colleagues that at this stage there is no use case for introducing numbers comprehensively throughout the toolkit. What we would like you to do is explore all of these other new facilities that we've provided and try and make those work for education and training purposes. And then represent your case for instruction numbers. We will listen. But as we've said already, they are not just useless over time. What do we do if we change a number? Do you all go off and... You sign up for notifications. Yeah. Yeah, but then you're going to have to change all your documentation to suit these new numbers, whereas if it's an active hyperlink, you don't change anything at all. It still works.
But you can't put an active hyperlink in a print book.
Yeah, that's very true. Sure.
And I'm concerned.
Sure. But I don't quite understand how a print book interacts with an integrating online service.
Well, when you're teaching 30 graduate students the basics of how to catalog, they work with the book, and if we're taking away the narrative function of the instructions and putting that all in application profiles, they need something to guide them along.
You can put your instructional material in as a document with active hyperlinks.
I get that. I don't. But I don't think Libraries Unlimited is going to allow me to necessarily do that with my published resources.
Well, that's really out of scope here.
No, it's not.
No, it's
No, it is not. Many of us have these documents that are not going to be connected to RDA.
Well, I suggest that you're going to have to rewrite all of your training aids. I suggest that when you rewrite them, you put them into the public domain. There's no need for this. You can put your instructions into the toolkit. Jamie showed you how to do it, and they can be as comprehensive or short as you want. And surely that is what you should be aiming to do. We're not here to support somebody else's income stream from sales of books.
Yes, there is also the issue of institutions.
There is also the issue of training LTAs, undergrad.
Drop the mic.
Who do not have access to the toolkit. There are institutions that refuse to buy the toolkit or don't have the money to buy the toolkit. How do we train this level of very vital cataloging personnel if we don't have access to the toolkit?
How do you train anybody if you don't have access to the thing that you're training for? This doesn't compute. We can add instruction numbering, but it's quite possible at the expense of maintaining it will put up the subscription to the toolkit. There's another factor.
Numbering will solve the basic problem.
There is no basic problem. I'm not convinced by these points of view.
Presumably the idea of get strings with multiple options for as the IRI links has been considered.
I'm not sure what you mean by get strings.
So if you're trying to find a place as a stand-in for instruction numbers, if you're trying to find some place in the RDA toolkit, and if the IRI is sufficiently descriptive, any up to the limitation that's allowed by get strings, IDs for the elements and options to be presented could be ANDed together.
Yeah. There are many possibilities. It's extremely flexible. There's nothing to prevent somebody from producing a numbering system and importing it as a document and then sharing it globally. But then the burden of maintaining that would be on the person who wants the numbering system.
But
Every option has a unique identifier, an IRI that you can link to externally if you can pass through the subscription barrier. Every section has the same, every element has an identifier. And then you can add your own identifiers in the form of bookmarks to anything. As Jamie has shown you, you can highlight a sentence in an instruction and then make a direct link to it. The instructions are grouped according to the original toolkit currently, and they are labeled. So you can also make verbal references. You can say, look at the instructions under, for example, recording an aggregate manifestation as a structured description for a particular element. And you can make perfectly good, understandable citations that way.
But for all the presentable options to be encoded in the IRI stream, get strings would need to be supported as opposed to post string. Post strings are hidden. You don't see the web browser bar.
Yeah, but as we've shown, you can pick up the IRI and paste it into the documentation. And they are basically, it's a get function, obviously. You're not pushing any information in, you're pulling information out.
Okay, so let's cut it off there. So we can continue talking about this topic later in the day. I'm sure it'll come up again. But we're going to take a break right now. Just before we take a break, I do want to address your comment about training and materials and affordability. We'll have a print version of RDA. We have special pricing for LIS institutions that we just lowered the price. You get 30 users for $500. I think it's a very reasonable deal. We changed that this year. We are taking a hit in our revenue from LIS because of this, but we're willing to work with people on making sure that RDA education can take place. So if you know of someone who says, we don't subscribe to Toolkit because it costs too much, well, they should contact us and tell us that, and we'll work with them to find a way that they can afford it. All right? Thank you. We'll take 15 minutes. Be back at 10:35.
It's 10:30.
Oh, is it?
10:25, yeah.
Okay. 10:40.
Yeah. Okay.
James, schools are appreciative of the drop in price for LIS.
Good.
Greatly